All right, multiple media outlets quick to point the finger at President Trump in the immediate aftermath of the attack in Pittsburgh. And, of course, those pipe bombs sent as well. But earlier today, he offered his own theory, tweeting, quote, "There is great anger in our country caused in part by inaccurate and even fraudulent reporting of the news. The fake news media, the true enemy of the people, must stop the open and obvious hostility and report the news accurately and fairly. That will do much to put out the flame of anger and outrage, and we will then be able to bring all sides together in peace and harmony. Fake news must end." White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders was also forced to swat away several attempts to pin this on the president during today's briefing. Watch.
The very first thing that the president did was condemn the attacks both in Pittsburgh and in the pipe bombs. The very first thing the media did was blame the president and make him responsible for these ridiculous acts. That is outrageous that would be the very first reaction of so many people across this country. I'm not finished. The only person responsible for carrying out either of these heinous acts were the individuals who carried them out.
All right, there was a time when a national tragedy would bring the country together, but sadly those days seem to have gone away. So if mass shooting isn't the time to cool things down, does such a moment exist anymore? Joining me now, it's tonight's panel. RNC spokesperson Kayleigh McEnany is here. She's joined by producer of the Fifth Column podcast, Anthony Fisher, and the editor-in-chief of Campus Reform, Lawrence Jones. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kennedy. So, Kayleigh, I will start with you because people were very quick to point out, first with the pipe bombs that were sent to various Democratic operatives and news outlets, that it was the president who directly inspired this person, and there was a cause and effect between the president's existence and this person manufacturing and sending out pipe bombs. What do you say to the people who wanted to pin it on the president so quickly?
That's appalling, and it's irresponsible. And these same folks that are trying to pin the blame on the president are now deflecting by pointing to the president's tweet this morning. Well, you know what? I believe in facts. CNN has that ad with the apple being the banana. We believe in facts. Well, let's look at the facts. President calls for unity. As you rightly point out, CNN immediately says, we're not just blaming the president, but we're blaming Sarah Sanders for the pipe bombs. Then in the second scenario, the horrific shooting this weekend, the president called for prayers. He praised our law enforcement. And then you watch CNN's morning show, and the folks over there are blaming the president. And even Joe Lieberman has to say, hold on, guys. Recall that this individual didn't even support the president. He is an anti-Trump individual, and he's a deranged man. So I believe in facts, and the facts are the media is pinning blame, and it's despicable.
Well, something is obviously going on. It's not just the president, and it's not just the media, because these attacks on synagogues, and we've seen a big uptick in anti-Semitic rhetoric and attacks and attempted attacks just in the last 2 years. What do you chalk that up to?
Well, I chalk it up to right-wing extremism, because it's not coming from, in this country at least, it's not coming from Muslim extremists, which is something that might happen in perhaps Europe or the Middle East. The vast preponderance of political extremism that results in violence in this country, and this is data-based, is coming from right-wing extremists, often white supremacists. Do I pin that on the president? I do not. The president's rhetoric is can be volatile at times, but they were kind of in that kind of a political moment. But the idea that this exists in a vacuum is not true.
But okay, go ahead.
Yeah, but don't you think that there is a little bit of extremism on both sides right now? I believe that the political tensions from the extremists on the left and the right are high. I think that we can also say that the leaders in both political parties have a duty to tone it down as well. But I think where it becomes problematic when people take the leap and say, because your rhetoric has been extreme, because it has gotten the worst of America out, that somehow you're responsible for that. And I think both sides is similar doing that. You got the Bernie crowd, and we know what one of his supporters did, but he's not responsible for that.
Okay, but I like to look at these things and sort of abstract some of the variables that we have, including the president. So if Donald Trump weren't our president, if it were Hillary Clinton, would we still have this level of inflamed rhetoric? I argue that we would, and I argue that before the candidacies of Hillary Clinton and President Trump, we had the Obama administration, and you still had school shootings and mass shootings, and I don't know if he was necessarily the best physician for the health, the cultural health of this country in that regard.
Yeah, but I don't think we've had peace for a minute right now. As you indicate, it's not like in these troubling moments that as much as a great orator as President Obama was, he didn't really bring peace when it comes to race relations or any time that we had these national tragedies. I think both political parties have a duty to bring the temperature down. And quite frankly, leaders over the past, 10, 12 years have failed.
Well, our media, I think it's important to point out the media's role in this. When you have the Washington Post headline that reads, in the wake of the Steve Scalise shooting, congressman shot, no mention of the Bernie Sanders identification of the shooter. And then this time, the headline reads that the individual mailing these devices was a Trump supporter. That's in the headline. The media is inflaming this by pinning it to a
you
political
also had
party.
people who were going out of their way saying we cannot tie the Steve Scalise shooter to Bernie Sanders. That's unfair, but please don't expect reciprocity in a climate like this. And I would argue, and I will argue later in the show, we're going to talk to some third-party candidates, that it is the two-party system. It is the duopoly that has gotten us here.